Hey guys, so today we have a 4-stroke 9.9 Yamaha outboard. It's 1994 TLRS, meaning it's a high thrust model. It's an electronic start and it doesn't have a tiller handle. It's meant to be controlled via some sort of other motor or outboard or stern drive. So we're going to have more installation videos around how we're going to connect this to my existing boat and how we're going to steer and start this thing. Today, we have a couple of things that we need to service on it, mostly because I bought this motor brand new to me. This motor has been sitting in this guy's garage for 20 years, almost on the dot, and it's never been started since then. I took the cover off. It looks basically brand new inside. I mean, this thing has maybe 20 hours ever. I obviously wanted to make sure it works. So I've checked the oil. Oil is good. I've already replaced the spark plugs, didn't get to record that. And I took apart the carb and cleaned it. And that was just so I can start and run it. And it does do that. And so we want to make sure this thing is ready for boating, for fishing. We're out here in Kitsap County in the Puget Sound. And so we're going to be using this thing as primarily a trolling motor as we fish for some salmon this season. So today we are going to be replacing two things. That will be the thermostat and thermostat gaskets, as well as the fuel filter. Like I said, this engine is like brand new. None of this stuff necessarily needs to be replaced, but it has been sitting around for 20 years and it hasn't been used. And so we want to make sure that there isn't any rot when we're out on the water, that everything's functioning as should. This is essentially the full service that we would get at 50 miles anyway. So we're going to go ahead and get that started for today. We're going to go ahead and do the thermostat and gaskets first. A couple of things for those that maybe are not familiar with outboard motors as much. There's two types. There's a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke. A 2-stroke motor uses pre-mixed gas, meaning it has oil and gasoline mixed together. That's how it runs. It's a motor that's considered a little bit more reliable just because it has a lot less moving parts. It's lighter a little bit, but the downside of those is that they're much louder. They produce a lot of smoke. And so if you're trying to have a more or less calm fishing day and not have a lot of fumes and just a lot of noise out on the water, you would use a 4-stroke. And the difference between a 2-stroke and a 4-stroke is that a 4-stroke runs on gasoline only. It's more like a regular car where it has its own separate oil reservoir that helps lube all the pistons in the engine. And then the gas is separated to a external tank. In this case, we have this little guy right here. We're going to be upgrading that to a bigger one soon, but that's the difference. These ones are a little bit heavier. They're a little bit more expensive typically, but they are a lot quieter, a lot less fumes, so you can kind of hear yourself think out in the water. So that's why I kind of went with this one. Got a good deal on this, and 4-stroke is just easier for me to hook up to my main gas tank that already exists on my boat. My boat has a 3.0 Merc Cruiser in there. It's a stern drive, meaning it has a inboard motor with an outboard propeller there. So we're going to be eventually connecting this motor to my main gas tank in my system so that we don't have to have multiple gas tanks and everything all over the boat. So let's go ahead and start with taking the cover off and locating the thermostat housing. To take off the cover, there is a little lever here, and you just flip it open, pick this thing up, and pop this sucker right off. Put it somewhere where it won't fall. Just to show you guys before I take everything apart, the parts that we're replacing today. So here on the left, we have the thermostat and gasket. These are not OEM. It was actually pretty difficult to find OEM replacement parts for this motor. It is a 94, so it's 32 years old, actually same year as I am. And so these were just available on Amazon. They're the ones that would come here the quickest. So not something that I would necessarily want to do all the time, but I think for this service, we're fine. We'll service it again at the end of the season anyways. So This should last. This package actually comes with the thermostat and the gasket. Do make sure that your package that you get for the thermostat comes with the gasket before you start taking it apart, because some of these guys really like to stick to the housing or to the cap after a while, and so if you rip it, that's not where you want to be. And then on the right here we have the fuel filter. I was not actually able to find at all the exact same fuel filter. That's it's an inline filter here on the 4-stroke. This seems like it would fit. It seems a little bit bigger than the one that's on there, and so we're going to go ahead and give it a test and just see what happens. It should work, but it is a little bit bigger than the OEM one. So let's get this started. So on this motor, to locate the thermostat's housing, you have this little knob you want to unscrew. So there's this on this left side, there's this little knob rod thingy, and you pop it out of its little housing and you pull it out, and then this thing slides out. And now you can take this off. I'm going to put this rod that I just took out back into its housing so I don't lose it. And right here, we have the thermostat housing, which is where we're going to kick it off. Let's go ahead and throw some gloves on so we don't get dirty and get started. Okay, so thermostat housing is going to have two 10mm bolts. You see there is bolt number 1 and bolt number 2 right here. So we're going to take these two off, and that's where the thermostat resides. I'm going to put these bolts off to the side here so I don't lose them. All right, and we're going to work this thing. Came off. The upper gasket seems to be in pretty good condition. And here is our thermostat. Just taking a look at it here. Very little corrosion, but there's definitely some. Given that we're in the Puget Sound, I would imagine the way that the steering system is on here, like I mentioned, this does not have a tiller handle. This motor is designated to be connected to another steering source, whether that be another outboard motor, a stern drive motor, or perhaps in this case a sailboat that needs a kicker to navigate perhaps through like the bay, the dock. And so looks like this guy hooked it up and used it for just a little while, but salt water here in the Sounds will do this even after one use. So we're going to get this thing out. But overall, thermostat is basically brand new. If we were to test it in some hot water, I'm sure it'd be working just fine. And like I said, I ran this thing twice already. It was running perfectly fine. It did not seem like the motor was overheating. But like I said, precaution is critical here. These gaskets both seem to be in very good shape. The interesting thing is that the gasket that's actually with the new thermostat housing doesn't seem like it even goes here, which is interesting. This is the gasket that came in the package. I just don't see it fitting anywhere here. If it's like this, then it's obviously not going to work. So I don't know what's going on here. This is definitely not from here. Thankfully, The gaskets do not need to be replaced. The gaskets are basically brand new. As you can see here, this bottom gasket, try and get a zoom in here, very good condition. And then of course, this gasket right here, very good condition. So we're going to go ahead and replace the thermostat without the new gasket, because our new gasket was a bust. The first thing that you want to do before you actually install thermostat is just compare to make sure that they're the same thing. Here you can see that the thermostat is set to open at 60 degrees Celsius. This is the aftermarket, the new one. And then on the bottom of the original one, you can see that it's 60 degrees Celsius as well. So obviously OEM, aftermarket, they look a little bit different. Different colors, different sizes inside. This OEM one looks a little bit bigger. The aftermarket one looks a little bit longer. So I guess we're going to just try it out and see what happens. I'm just going to take this. Looks like there's a little bit of dust or something that got in there. We don't want that. Make sure nothing else is in there. And we go ahead and plop this bad boy right in there. It seems to fit in that housing just fine. Let's just test how the old one fits, just to see if there's any difference. This old one fits in exactly how this new one does. I'm not seeing any difference in the way that it sits, in the height that it sits. And so that gives me confidence that this aftermarket one should be fine. If anything, it's maybe a little bit more loose here. But nothing concerning. So we're going to go ahead and get this sucker installed. Obviously, we're going to test it before we take it out on the water. Bring in our 10mm bolt spec. Just getting those started. Like I said, I just need this thing to last me this season. I'm going to keep the OEM one in case this one obviously takes a dump on me. That one is very functional, still works, there's nothing wrong with it. But in case this one isn't working the way that it should, I'll use the OEM one until I service this motor again at the end of the season. As we're tightening this down, I could just tell by these bolts. These were freshly painted. If you go back in the video, you don't even see these scratches. This is the first time that this housing is being taken apart, which furthermore proves my point. There's just a few hours on this motor, and this motor is supposed to last a long, long time. I've taken care of, so that's what we're going to do here. We're not going to tighten this too much. It's just a 10mm aluminum housing. We're going to make it tight, but we're not going to make it too tight. That's why we're using a 1/4. A lot harder to break something with a 1/4 or 1/4 than a 3/8 or a half, obviously, with the 10mm. But anyways, that is how you replace the thermostat housing. It's got this guy. We're going to take out our metal key. And so the way that this works is the Yamaha cover goes up. Probably come up from this side. Yamaha cover goes up. It goes around these ends first, and then these ears hug around the Yamaha ears. Duh. Then we're going to take our key and slide it in from this end, from the right to the left, all the way through. The pointy tip is going to be up, until it goes through, and then there's a little groove that you just press it into, and now it holds. Make sure that everything is seated here. There's these two little rubber grommets that you kind of press this into, so it's in there, and then we just tighten this guy down, hand tighten, obviously. That's the thermostat. We're going to test her, but that's that. Okay, so we are on the opposite side of the motor now, on the right side. And so here we can see the carb. Here we have on the right side, this is our air intake. Our carburetor's right here. And so essentially what I did is I took apart the carb with the air intake, so this whole section. Disconnect the throttle here. There's a few bolts. Took it out, and I basically took it apart into big pieces. I did not fully take it apart, excuse me. I just cleaned it out with parts cleaner. It wasn't starting when I bought it because even though it was shiny, like literally shiny inside, there was some residue in there. And I think 20 years of standing around doesn't help either. And so after I took it apart, cleaned it, put it back together, she ran just fine. We're going to test it again here in a little bit. But what we're doing right now is replacing this fuel filter. On these motors, it's an inline fuel filter, meaning directly in the fuel line from the intake. And we can see it right here, this little guy. The replacement, as I said earlier in the video, that I got, not in OEM, because I couldn't find one that would come in time, is this guy. And this guy is about a ½ inch or so longer than the OEM. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can put this on and how it's going to work, if it's going to cause any issues. Obviously, we're going to test everything. I don't think that these things take apart. It looks to be pretty well shot. It's not very focused there, but you would think that this just kind of screws off, right? But it doesn't. So we're going to install this one, and then we're going to take the OEM one and see if we can take that apart, if we can clean it out with some parts cleaner or a blower, and maybe just reuse that one. But we won't know until we take it apart. To take it apart, quite simple here. So we have this hose is held in this metal thingy here, and then there's these two clips that we're going to move out. As you're installing or taking off a fuel filter, something important to note is the arrows on it. So as you guys can see, hopefully, you guys can see now there's an arrow. The arrow is pointing up. Should be visible now. There it is. And that arrow indicates the direction through of how the fuel is traveling to your motor. And so very important to ensure that when you're installing the new filter, that's the right way, not the wrong way. Our new filter has a little bit of a different sign. Nothing crazy. I want to see if I can get this focused in. But it says flow with an arrow pointing. And so essentially then the way that this new filter should be sitting is the arrow pointing up, just like the other one. And so it's going to be sitting like this to make it easier for visual learners. The cap side, at least on this motor, goes up, and then the little barrel points down. Booyah. So this has been sitting for 20 years. We're going to see how much resistance this pipe gives us. Not a lot. Not a lot. She came right off. Probably a good idea to disconnect your fuel if you haven't already. I obviously have, but disconnect your fuel before you take it off, or you're going to have a gasoline shower. We are going to pry this up somehow so it's not leaking, and then we're going to take this sucker off. Okay. So here we have a little bit of gas leaking out of it. Fine, I'll clean it up later. This guy doesn't come apart either. Now I don't see, obviously it's going to be very hard to do, right? I mean, to the eye, at least, from the little tiny hole that we do have here, I'm not seeing anything in there. It's obviously a little bit yellowed. Looking to see if there's any sediment here at the top. Sorry, at the bottom of the barrel right here. I'm not seeing anything that should concern me, but we're going to go ahead and leave this OEM filter with our OEM thermostat and try to install the new one. Something that I'm comparing now is to just make sure that these two kind of nipples are roughly the same size. We don't want it too small or too big to damage the pipe. It seems to be about the same size. This new one might be just a little bit bigger, but not enough to give me any concern. So we're going to install this new guy. A reminder, right? Flow up. In this case, we have the cap going up, the barrel pointing down. So we're going to go ahead and install this guy. Okay, that's on there. This metal clip is a little bit tight going on, but I'm trying to do it without pliers. I don't want to damage anything here. Pliers are super easy to damage hoses that have been sitting around for 20 years. But anyways, oh, I hope that's been focused the whole time. I'm sorry if not. You get the gist. If you don't, sucks. But we have the upper hose connected. We're going to connect the lower hose right now. Same exact process. Just pushing this through tube through the bottom. It's going to sit against this little bump right here. And we're going to get this guy back on without using pliers if we can help it. Okay, so this guy's on here. We're good. Pointing those the same direction. We're going to sit this hose back in its housing. Okay. You know, sitting in there just fine. We're going to test run this guy right now just to see what's happening. So next, we are going to get this guy hooked up. With these electric motors, I got to hook it up to a battery. I got to get the water ready. And so let me get that set up and then we'll resume from there. How about that? All right, so maybe let's quickly talk about how to get these guys, these motors set up. In case you've never done an electric starts outboard motor before. These are mostly common, or more commonly they're started by the pull cord. But not these. So these ones are going to have a battery cable here that you would plug into your starting battery. My starting battery is on my boat, which is in the shop right now getting serviced for other reasons. So we're going to be using my house battery to start. It's fine, not ideal, but it'll work. And then the other cables that we have from the motor is, this is going to be our main power cable, or switch cable, whatever it is. This is how we turn the motor on and off. And then we have the gear cable here on the right, and then our throttle cable here on the left. I'll make another video about how to connect and disconnect these, just because it's a little bit tricky if you've never done it before. Like I said, this is not common on most outboards. Most outboards, you have a little handle that goes out right here, and you have some sort of gear that goes up and down, or something on the side here that you can control the throttle, the gear with, and then you would start it by pulling it here. But this one's fancy, very fancy. So we're going to get this set up to the battery. We're going to get this set up to the water. We're going to get this thing running. Let's go. All right, so we got the water running. Waiting for this guy to fill up so we can go ahead and start it up. The battery's all hooked up, ready to go. We have our control panel here, where we're going to be starting the motor from. Wanted to quickly chat through, why would you fill a massive barrel of water versus use these water muffs. There's different versions of these. These are just the ones I have. With the water muffs, they're great when you don't have any other option. This is the most common way to do it, and this is how I would test the my main boat with. However, when you have an option to do something with, to start a motor in a bucket of water, it's a lot better for testing. Yeah, you get to see how the motor runs a lot better, and the motor is going to be more real life situation based, the way that it's going to act, the way that it's going to run. And so in this case, it's easy enough for me to do this, and we're going to do that. Water waste, I don't know. You're probably going to waste a lot more water on the earmuffs anyways, actually. So this might be more efficient cost-wise too. So just something to consider with and when possible. I personally prefer to do it in the bucket. I'm not a mechanic. This is not my job. It's not my full-time job. I do this for fun. I do this because I don't want to pay someone else to do this for me, because I think I can do it myself. So take my advice with a grain of salt. While the water's filling, I'm going to run through some of the services that we're going to do on this thing. So far we've cleaned out the carb. We have replaced the 2 spark plugs. Those are located right here, upper lower, 2-piston motor. Next we are, and then today we just did the thermostat and the fuel filter. And so next we have to replace the impeller and gear oil. I have the gear oil, I have the gear oil pump, and I have the gaskets for the lower unit bolts. I don't have the impeller kit yet. That should come sometime this week, I hope. So we're going to be shooting that video soon. So that video is coming out soon. And then the other thing I'll be replacing is the motor oil. These engines actually don't have a motor filter. The filter is built inside the motor. It's like a little screen, but there isn't an actual physical motor that you would unscrew. So we're going to be draining and replacing the motor oil. I have the oil. I'm going to be doing that at the same time with the impeller change. Once those services are done, the motor is going to be good to go. Another video that I'm going to do is actually running fuel additives through the gas tank to clean out the motor and carburetor a little bit more. When I had this motor running earlier, it was sputtering a little bit. It was firing out of the cylinder. Seems like when I cleaned out the carb, there's still a little bit of carbon buildup somewhere in the carb, and it's just not firing correctly at times. It's not doing this every single time, and maybe once we get this thing started, I'll be able to show you guys. But we're going to be essentially running 2-3 cycles of fuel additive in the fuel tank to help decarbonize. some of the gunk that's been building up over the last 20 years as this motor has been sitting unused in the garage. So yeah, those are all the things we're going to do before we get this thing going. Looks like the water's ready to go. So let's get this thing started. Before we do that, gotta put some gas in it. So that is what we're gonna do. This is, I'm gonna show you guys right now, is the original OEM gas tank that came with the motor. They don't make these anymore, not that I've seen at least. And so I'm gonna get a bigger one. This is a little small, but it's gonna do just fine for now. Clip this guy in, and then we're gonna prime the bulb until it gets hard. Six pumps for me. This gas tank looks like a relic a little bit. Looks like something you'd see in maybe out of World War II. But it works. I think it's a 5-gallon. 14 liters. 3.7 US gallons. I'm not going to be taking that out trolling, I can guarantee you that. Maybe as a spare tank, but I'm going to be getting something a little bit bigger. Anyways, gas is connected, battery's connected, the motor's in water. We're ready to start. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. I'm starting the motor from kind of back here. Got my control unit switch here because it is electronic. So all right, motor's running, pumping water. You want to make sure it's pumping water. If it's not, no bueno. Turn that motor on. So what we're going to do is let this thing warm up a little bit. We obviously want to see the thermostat open up when the motor heats up. Want to make sure that the motor's running fine with no issues, and so we're going to give about 15 or so minutes to run, and then we'll see what happens.